Hello everyone, I am Bogdan Harris and I hope you can hear us and watch us. So if you can hear us, just type anything in the chat in YouTube so we can know that everything is fine. And by the way, if you have any issues with our sound or camera, so just let us know in the chat. This is something that is very important for us. So as I said, I'm Bogdan Harris and this is the data storyteller community. And by the way, not only data storyteller, Data Zen Greece is also with us, who help us with running this session. So you can see us at different YouTube channels, depending whether this is Data Storyteller or Data Zen Greece. So don't forget to subscribe to the channels, not to miss anything and be always up to date. So, by the way, what data storyteller is? The data storyteller is the community uniting people working with data analytics, with big data, data science, clouds, and a lot of other very interesting things. So before presenting our speaker, as I mentioned, we also have Data Zen Greece today. And Apostolos, could you please tell us what Data Zen Greece is about?
Thank you, Bogdan, and thanks everyone for joining our call today. My name is Apostolos Labropoulos. I would like to explain a few things about the Data Zen Greece. If you are passionate about data, analytics, and technology, I would like to invite you to become a part of the Data Zen Greece community. We are a vibrant community where data enthusiasts, professionals, and learners, we come together to share knowledge, insights, and ideas related to data, analytics, and technology. So whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting your data journey now, in Data Zen Greece, you can connect with like-minded people, individuals in the field. You can stay updated with the latest trends, tools, and techniques, participate in engaging discussions, webinars, and events, and you can explore career opportunities and network possibilities. So we're expecting to see you all in the Data Zen Greece community. Back to you, Bogdan.
Yeah, thank you, Apostolos. So today we have an amazing speaker, a Microsoft MVP, a senior solution architect at EPAM, Michal Gutzait. So Michal, thank you for coming today, and we are going to talk about Databricks, and I guess we are going to do a deep dive, right? What are we going to talk about?
Yes, I'm going to talk about ways to load data into Databricks, into Azure Databricks. So I'm going to touch a little bit of Azure and a lot of Databricks. So hi, everyone. I've already been presented. So I'm Michal Gutzait. I write it differently, so it's Michal. I am a Microsoft Data Platform MVP, and I've been working at EPAM for around 3 years and been playing with data for 35 years. So databases, data platform. And you can find me in this email and on LinkedIn as well. So just a few notes. I rather answer the questions at the end, but if I see questions coming that are important to what I'm speaking about at the same time, I will try to answer. Also, I just got out of a very bad cold, so if I need to cough, I will just pause for a second and cough. I have my water bottle, and we will continue. So we have a lot to talk about today. I'm going to go fast on some of the slides. Some of the demos I'm going to do fast. It's an introduction. It's a basic introduction to the ways to download, to load data into Azure Databricks. Let's start. This presentation is basically for IT engineers and architects, and you need some basic understanding of data platforms and ETLs, data loading. But even if not, this is a basic presentation. And at the end of the presentation, there's also a lot of links on how to start. There's a lot of information out there, either from Microsoft and Databricks. So don't get scared to start. It's pretty, once you understand the concepts, it's really easy to start. So I'm just going to introduce the material here. What are we going to do today? So I'm going to talk about Databricks and why Databricks, why Azure Databricks. I'm going to talk about the architecture on Azure that Databricks is part of it. And I'm going to talk about, obviously, the ways to load data, along with demos for each one of them. And if we have time, I'm going to touch a little bit about the Unity catalog and some additional topics that we need to research or learn after this presentation, after we load the data. So additional important topics. So why Databricks? So on Azure, we have two analytics platforms. The out-of-the-box Microsoft analytics platform is Azure Synapse, and it's proprietary to Azure. So if you are on a different cloud, you don't have the Azure Synapse. And Azure Databricks, it's basically a tool that can be portable between different clouds, and it can also be installed on its own VM. So if you're using Databricks, you could use the same code in different environments. So that's the strength of the Databricks. And also, if you have this skill set internally, you may want to use Databricks rather than Synapse. But I'm going to talk about the interaction between Synapse and Databricks a little bit, just to touch it. So what is the Azure Databricks? This is a unified analytics platform for data engineers, data science, and analytics machine learning. So basically, you can install Azure Databricks on a VM on Azure, or you have the Databricks Azure service, which is a PaaS solution. So today, what I'm going to show you is the Azure Databricks PaaS solution. So it's just a service on Azure. There are a lot of capabilities to the Databricks. They call it Lakehouse. I'm going to touch a little bit what is a Lakehouse and what we're doing. And the ones in red is the ones that I'm going to talk about today. So the data ingestion, the real-time processing, the data integration, schema evolution, and data transformations. And the ones that are in green, I'm going to touch very little, just to get an idea what they are. And the rest, the data analytics and reporting, machine learning, and data sharing and additional stuff of analytics, I'm not going to touch today. Let's talk about the architecture. The way both tools are working, both Synapse and Azure Databricks PaaS solution, is that the compute is separated from the storage layer. So this is very strong because this means that you have a storage layer where you can use any other tool to populate data. So as you can see, they both can work with other cloud storage. So the beauty is that you can populate the data from other tools, and you can use basically this data that was already populated using the Databricks and Azure Synapse. So Databricks has, depending on what you need, Databricks has either a cluster configuration or it can be executed in single mode. And obviously, the pricing model is different between the two. You can decide what will be the computing power that you're going to use. Obviously, you're going to pay for compute if you use more compute power. And a lot of formats are being supported by Databricks. And just give me a second because I need to cough. Sorry for that. So few formats are being supported by Databricks. And so this is the way Microsoft envisions the integration of the Databricks on Azure. So we have the ingestion layer. Microsoft envisions using Azure Event Hubs and Azure Data Factory. And then we have on the processing side, we have the Azure Databricks for the analytics, where you can use Spark and the machine learning flow. The storage layer would be Azure Data Lake storage, and I'm going to talk about the bronze, silver, and gold architecture later. And also you can use Synapse and Power BI as part of their reporting. Excuse me for that. And also you have in the serving layer, you can use the Azure Machine Learning as well, and Azure Kubernetes. And in that integration, in the bottom, you can see the other services. For example, Azure Purview, where you can see the lineage of the data. You have Azure DevOps for in the source code and the CI/CD process, and so forth. This is how Microsoft envisions the integration of Databricks in their environment. However, when you decide on the architecture, if you talk to 5 different architects, you will get 7 different opinions about how to architect your environment. And what I can tell you is that both Microsoft Azure and the Databricks are 2 different universes that contain a lot of things that you can do, a lot of services, a lot of tools, and they both have some of those. They have both of them. They have the same capabilities for some things. So, for example, you have streaming in both, scheduling in both, data ingestion and transformation, and data governance. Those are just examples. So when you are on Azure, Microsoft will have one vision, and Databricks may have a different vision on how you should architect your environment. I'm going to touch a little bit about this and show you how you do things in Databricks. But I'm also going to show you some parts of the Azure, what we can do to help to ingest data for Databricks. And I'm going to take a sip. Just give me a moment. Sorry for that. That was not planned. Okay, let me continue. So, what is the data lakehouse? If you were working for a few years in the industry, you probably have been working with a data warehouse. Data warehouse, we would get information about from our data sources, and then our data warehouse includes our historical data, and then we can massage the data and show it in a way that the business understands. But basically, we're working on the historical data, on the existing data. What is a lakehouse? The lakehouse includes the functionality or the capabilities of the data warehouse. It also allows us to do predictive data analysis and AI, machine learning, and so you can have data that is not only structured but also semi-structured and so forth. So the lakehouse basically includes all those functionalities. And if we look at the way that Databricks looks at the lakehouse with all the data, the way it is that you have the analytic storage that is decoupled from the compute, and basically that storage includes all the data, so all the types of data, and this data can be analyzed by differently. So you have the big data engineering that are handling the data. You can have streaming from different data sources. You have the data science and the machine learning that can look at the data from different perspectives and have reporting and predictive analytics and so forth. So the way that we envision this is that we have one place. You don't need to have like different like separate data silos. For example, you have different data sources, and you can just move the data to a centralized place. Obviously, we need to make sure that we know what we have and it's governed in a way that it's not becoming a swamp. A swamp means that you're just putting all your data in a specific place, but you don't know what the data is, what are the types of data that you have, and you may have duplicates and everything. So you have like a centralized location where you have all your data. It's organized, it's managed, it's governed, and you can use it from different perspectives. So how does the Azure Databricks Lakehouse architecture looks like on Azure? So we have the data sources on the left, and we have the ingestion layer, which could be either streaming or batches. So we're taking data from the data sources, we're moving them into a store. So the storage is going to be on Azure, it's probably going to be Azure Data Lake storage. The difference between the Azure Data Lake storage and a blob storage is that the Azure Data Lake storage has the ability to host the data in a way that you can analyze it with the analytics. So I'm going to talk about that as well. So I'm going to talk also about the data lake, the structure on the data lake, and I'm going to talk about how the data lake looks like, and I'm also going to demo this. So basically, you have a place to store the data from the data source, massage the data, make sure that you don't have duplicates, ensure that you merge data from different systems in a way that it's easy to review. And then you have another layer where you can actually create your model, with the fact tables and dimensions and serve. And the visualization can be done with, for example, Power BI on Azure. So the Delta Lake architecture from Databricks. So Databricks, it's a methodology called medallion architecture. And what we do is, imagine that you have a lot of data sources, and you need to move the data into like a central store. So you have the raw data from your sources. You have to put it someplace, and then you have to refine the data. So just a very simple example, let's say that one system you have the clients table, and in another system you call it customer. So, and how do you merge between them? What is the way that you're going to identify the same customer and client from different systems? So what you're going to do is you're going to copy all the data into the bronze layer, which is the ingestion. And I'm going to talk also about landing zone later. For now, I'm just talking and explaining how Databricks envisions the Delta Lake. So you have the raw data, then you need to have like a process that is going to refine the data. So find duplicates, like I said, client and customer merging, and to have the data more readable or more understandable by different, or merge data between different systems. And then the next layer is the gold layer, which is like the dimension and fact, or something that is going to be used by the business for their reports. So it's an open data format, Delta Lake. It's owned by Databricks, but you also have this ability in Azure. So it's a format, and it's not only for Databricks, also Synapse Analytics can handle that type of format. Okay, and I'm going to show how it works. It's based on Parquet files, but it's not just regular Parquet files, and we're going to see this in the demo. It's Parquet files that are part of an architecture, because on top of the Parquet file, you have logs and indexes that are allowing this to look like a database or being handled like a database. And it has those logs allow you to have ACID transactions, which is atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. So look at this as files that can handle transactions. So you can basically do delete, update, and merge. It's not really like a relational database. The performance may not be the same when you're trying to update the data, because you're actually working on Parquet files. But you do have this ability. So when you architect your system, you want to make sure that your processes are not working like an RDBMS. So you have batches that are going to probably, merge data or delete data or update data on a regular basis. But you have to be careful because it's not an actual RDBMS. But the capability is there. Let's say that you need to add data or merge data, you still have this ability there. And it allows you to unify the streaming and the batches, okay, because it has the ACID transactions. And the schema either can be enforced. So imagine that you have a table as the source, and you would like to add a column or change the data type. So you can say, okay, for this specific table in my Delta Lake, I don't want you to be able to add columns, so this will fail. But in addition, alternatively, you can say, okay, for this specific table, I don't want to enforce the schema. So what it allows you for schema evolution. And it means that if you, for example, you add a column, it's just going to add it to the Delta table so that your batches or your streaming is not going to fail. And it also has the ability to handle like the exceptions. So if you have errors, what we can do with that? Okay, and Databricks. When you create the Databricks database, what you actually have is the Delta Lake architecture. So it's not a real database, even though you look at it like you can create tables, you can create views, and we're going to see this in the demo. But it's not a real database. It's created on top of the Delta Lake architecture. So let's talk about the Azure Data Lake Generation 2 storage. So this storage just looks like any other storage. It has a container, which is like the root directory, and then underneath you can create different folders, and underneath the folders you can either create other folders or you can create files. And the formats that you can use, there are multiple formats that you can use for the files. We are going to talk about a little bit about JSON, Parquet, and the Delta. So basically, what you can do is, let's say you would like to, you have a data source, which is, let's say, an RDBMS database. Yeah, you can have an ETL, for example, that will transfer the data into, for example, a CSV file. So sometimes, really depending on your implementation, some users or analytics or an analyst would like to see the data in a CSV format or in Excel. And if you need to, for example, massage the data further, you may be using the other formats. So it's really depending on your implementation, but it has this capability. So why would we use Azure Data Lake Storage? First of all, this is the analytics storage of Azure, but it's also cheap. If you look at the prices by Azure, you will see that it's very cheap to keep data there. What you're paying for is the compute. It's very fast to configure. I'm going to show you. It's very easy to maintain. It's easy to navigate. And it can be used right away. So once you have, like, you spin up the service and you can just start using it right away. You know, like you can use this for any data that you need to keep. And it has a very satisfying performance when you're reading files. And it allows for hierarchical namespace. Hierarchical namespace means that you can have like folders under folders and files under. And you need hierarchical namespace for Delta and also for other implementations of analytics. And it's well integrated with other Azure services. Obviously, you have all the other Azure services for monitoring and lineage and everything else. Let's talk about what is the landing zone, because if you remember, maybe not, the Microsoft architecture or the Microsoft vision says, and also Databricks says, okay, we're going to have a landing zone for my raw data. So if you talk to architects, some will tell you, okay, we need a landing zone on top of the silver layer, on top of the ingestion layer. And some will say, okay, let's use the ingestion layer as our landing zone. So it really depends. And so for the landing zone, the concept is that you have many data sources and you want to transfer data into that landing zone that is going to be on the Data Lake Azure. And when we look at the data lake storage, we will see that we can create any container, we can create any folder. And so you decide in your architecture, what is your landing zone? What is your ingestion layer? Are they the same one? And you need some kind of ETL or ELT to connect to the data sources and copy the information into the data lake storage. So in this case, this is the Azure Data Factory, but we are going to see that we can do that also with Azure Databricks. So that's the concept. And imagine that you move the data into our data lake storage. Imagine the possibility that we can run queries on the data lake storage. So I put a question mark because I'm going to talk about this later and show you how this can work. But it can work, and this is beautiful. And so let's talk also about so I mentioned a little bit the data swamp. So imagine that you're going to transfer a lot of data into the data lake, and then you say, what the heck did I do? Like, where can I find my customers? Where can I find my clients? Maybe we have a team of data engineers, and we're both working on the same ETL or pipelines from Azure Data Factory, and we're moving the same type of data. So it's very important when you architect your system to have some kind of governance. So I'm putting here a question mark because we have this ability in Databricks as well as on Azure. So Databricks, we have the Unity catalog. I'm going to talk about that. And on Azure, we have the purview. So I'm going to show you some demo if we have time. Okay, so this is an example of the landing zone. So in my demo, I'm just going to show you the architecture. So I have a SQL Server, so Azure SQL database. So it's a PaaS solution on Azure, and this is Azure Data Factory. So it's one of my demos. But just to give you an idea how it works. So let's say that on the SQL side, I have a table. This is the table, okay, so SQL Server table. It could have been Oracle, MySQL, any other data source. And then on the data lake, I will have a container or the landing zone or the silver or whatever you want to call it. Underneath that container, I can have an address folder. And under the address folder, I will have a bunch of Parquet files or CSV files or however you architected this. And imagine that from Databricks and from Synapse Analytics, you can point to that address folder as if it was a database. So you can basically create tables, and I'm going to talk about that later as well. And later, I'm just putting it to the question mark because I'm going to talk about it also. Delta Lake versus other file formats. So what will be the difference between the Delta Lake and other file formats? So I said it before, the Delta Lake is an ACID. It can be like a database. So it allows you to do data manipulation, right? Versus other formats where you cannot do that. So if you have a CSV file and you want to update a row as if it was a database, you cannot do that. So Delta Lake is the solution to have the ACID transactions. Let's go to the demo. And I'm just going to show you, let me just go here. So this is my Azure. And what I have a SQL Server database called AdventureWorks 2019. I have my Databricks. I have my Synapse as well, and I have my Azure Data Factory. Where did I put my data? I have Synapse Workspace, and I have the storage account as well. Okay, so and by the way, Azure Data Factory, you can also use the Synapse pipelines, which is more or less the same. So it's Azure Data Factory or Azure Synapse pipelines. So let's see the database. So if I look at the database, I can basically connect to that database either using the Azure tools, or I can use the SSMS if you know SQL Server. And I just wanted to show you a little bit what we have. So we have tables here, and you see I have a bunch of tables, address, customer. And so if I look at my data, I have the address, and you can see that I have data. Okay, so I have address data. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to, later I'm going to show you how to copy data from that address into the Azure storage, Azure Data Lake storage. So let's look at, okay, so right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to, if I open my Databricks, it allows me to launch the workspace. I already launched the workspace, and then what you will see is this. So you see, I have built, and it's very easy, by the way. You have a lot of information and videos on how to create a workspace and what to do. So I created a Databricks cluster. So because I will need it later, I'm just going to spin it up, and it takes a few minutes. But in the meantime, I'm going to show you other stuff. So in my workspace, this is the Azure Databricks workspace. I already have notebooks that I've created. Okay, so you work with notebooks, and I have, for my demo, I created one. As you can see, I have multiple, and we're going to see that later. If you don't know the notebook, so you have the ability to do a markdown. This is like it's like a Word document that you can create like all kind of like descriptions. So you have different cells. If, for example, I can create a cell below or above, okay. What you see is a notebook that I already created, and the beauty is even if I ran it, because imagine that every time I spin up the cluster, I'm paying for the compute. So what Databricks does is that even if I ran it like yesterday or 2 days ago, it will still keep the results of what I was running last. Okay, so I don't have to rerun it. If my data refreshes, then obviously I will have to rerun. But what I'm going to show you first is how to create. This is just how to create the notebook. I'm going to go back to it later. Let's go back to the presentation. Okay, so what we've seen is that we saw the SQL Server database from which I'm going to get data, and this is going to help me later in the other demos. One more thing that I wanted to show you and I forgot is that here I can go to my storage, the storage account. That's my storage account. So here I have containers. So I've created one container because I wanted all my demo to be on one container. It doesn't really matter. It's like a folder. And under this, I created my raw, cleans, and reporting. And under the raw, I created two directories under which I'm going to put the data for my address and my product tables. I'm just showing you the architecture on which my demos are going to be based. So let's talk about the ways to load data. So it's very important that when we're ingesting data into the Databricks Lakehouse, there are three very important things to remember. That we have various data formats, so we need to allow for structured, semi-structured, and structured. We have various data types. So, for example, Databricks will have different data types and sources. So we need to make sure that we know which data types to use for each one. It's going to be differently, obviously. And we need to make sure that we have the capability to either ingest streaming or schedule. So the schedule can be every minute, every 2 days, every 2 weeks. So we have this capability in the Lakehouse. So before I start, I would like to explain what is the Databricks DBFS. So this is like the Databricks file system, and what it does, it provides you a logical. So you can either use it's like a storage. It also allows you to have like a logical view of the underlying storage. So in our case, it's going to be Azure Data Lake storage. But imagine that, so basically you will have, you can have like a mount point or a point to a specific container or folder in the Azure Data Lake. So this is going to be transparent to the Databricks analysts. We don't need to understand the architecture under the data lake storage. And also, like I said before, Databricks can be portable. Imagine that tomorrow you want to move your Databricks to AWS or just have another implementation and you would like to move the same type of data. You just have to modify the mount or the logical representation of the storage to I don't know, to S3, right? Or if you want Google, then Google. Or if you want a VM, then it's going to be the the underlying storage. So this is so this is the DBFS, and Azure Databricks works only with DBFS, even though you can work directly with the data lake storage, but you lose some kind of the security. Like you will have to work with an account that sees the entire data lake storage, for example, or the container. So it's less convenient, and it's also more configuration. You will need to know the the security on the Azure data lake storage, and so it's more complicated. So it's very easy to just configure the DBF and work with that from Databricks. Okay, so just to have the demo, I was there before. So we have here, we have the steps to do that. So my first notebook says, okay, how would we set it up? So when you look at examples that you have, you will find this. And this is how you run this configuration. So some things are given, and then you have to, there are instructions basically, and in the links that I provided at the end of the presentation, you also have how to configure that. So you have to go and enter your Azure information here. And what you do is you have like the configuration. So that's like the security configuration and the information about your Azure client and stuff like that. And then what you do is you just do this. So you mount based on the container. Okay, so this is how you do it. So in my case, I showed you my data lake. So I have, this is my MVP demo is my container. PL, my dev demo here is my Azure Data Lake. And this is how it has. And I'm pointing this mount. So from DBS perspective, this is how Databricks will see. And it's pointing to my raw container. Okay. And I could do it in different ways, right? I could do like a mount for my entire container or for my specific directory. So that gives me the flexibility. And then if I want to unmount this folder, let's say I made a mistake, I can unmount this and remount with different. So for example, if I wanted to change the raw to something else, I could dismount and remount with a different configuration. And so, and there are other commands. This is Python. We have additional languages that we can run, SQL, Scala, R. Okay, it's really depending what you're familiar with. I'm more familiar with Python and SQL. So if you want to display your mount, this is the command, and you will find that this my okay here. So you will find the one that I mounted here. Okay, and then if I want to look at the directories underneath, there's also a command. So I can do ls. So basically, it's very easy from Databricks to see the data lake storage, the underlying files and folders. Okay, so this is it. So I'm going to park here, and I'm going to ask you if you do have questions so far, because it's just going to get a little bit more complicated as we go. So feel free to ask questions. And if you don't have, I will continue.
No questions yet.
Okay, awesome. So I hope I'm clear enough, and not because I'm not being understood. Okay, so let's continue. So we talked about the data ingestion. So this is the Microsoft data ingestion as well as Databricks on Azure. So those are the data stores, the data sources. Sorry, we have the ability to do streaming events, source files going to landing zone. Like I said, the landing zone could be the bronze layer, depending on your architecture. And now I'm going to talk about how to load data using Databricks and also some Azure. So ADF is Azure into the bronze layer, and also I'm going to talk about the transformations that you can do. And then so you have in Databricks you have ETL and streaming capabilities with optimized Spark, with Python's job scheduler. So you have additional services both on Azure and on Databricks for additional transformations. Let's just dive in. Let's talk first about the copy into, because this one is easier. It's shorter. So it's mostly done for batch file ingestion. It's because of the performance you don't want to do this when you have like huge sets of data or many files because of the performance. But again, this is really depending on your implementation. If you need to load data entire night from once a night, maybe you would like to use that. So really depending on your architecture. If you are familiar with SQL, this is SQL based. So for example, I've been working with databases all my life. So I'm very familiar with SQL. This is why I like this utility. It supports any file format and data source. So it supports JDBC. And it's very simple to use, and it's leveraging the Unity catalog for security. So I'm going to talk about Unity catalog if I have time at the end. Basically, the Unity catalog is your way to govern the data. So basically, everything that is in your work in Azure in Databricks workspace is seen by the Unity catalog, and you can give permissions via the Unity catalog and do a lot of things related to management, data management, like table management, data management, and security. And let's look at a quick demo for this. So I'm going to go back to my my space. So let's continue with the demo. So it's really very easy. You have a SQL command. So this is just to show you the original table that I've shown in SQL. And by the way, what I did before is that I use Azure Data Factory, like Microsoft recommends, to move the data from that SQL table into my Azure Data Lake storage into under the folder of the address in Parquet file, regular Parquet file, not Delta file. This is the original table, how it was configured in SQL Server, okay? And the Parquet files are already in the data lake. And I'm going to, if we have time, I'm going to show you how I did it. Okay, and so this is it. So I'm creating a table in Databricks. Okay, so as you can see, I'm using the SQL. Okay, SQL here. I'm creating the table. Now you can see that, for example, I don't know, some of you may know SQL Server, but integer, I had to translate into integer because I can. Identity is a sequential number in SQL Server, like an automatic. I don't need that here because here I'm just copying the data from a source, and there's no need. I'm working with files, and here varchar was translated to string, and basically you have if you just Google, you will find the Databricks data types, and you can also find information about how to translate source, like for example SQL or Oracle data types into Databricks. And for example, modified date is translated to timestamp. And this is the command. Look how easy it is. So I'm creating the table and I'm copying into my address, my address table from that mount. Like I said before, we created the mount. This is going to my Azure Data Lake storage, and I just go to the address and this is the Parquet file that I have. So if I show you the Parquet here, I have under the address, I have this Parquet file that I already copied from my data source with Azure Data Factory. Back. So if I select star from that, I can see, and it's exactly the same as the data in the database that I've shown you. And if I want to review the table that I just created, it will tell you this is a delta. Okay, so this is very important. When I'm creating this table, this is a delta table. This is the architecture of Databricks. So you can see that this is the format is delta for my table. And this is the workspace, what it is. Okay, I showed you the workspace on the data lake. So if I go back, I have this location, but if I go back to my data lake, and let's look at the containers. Just a second. Okay, so I only see the containers that I created, but Databricks also creates on the data lake. It creates a different location. Okay, and it's not accessible. So when I do this is called manage table. It means that I created this in data lake. In Databricks. And so I cannot access the actual files. I can only access the data from that table. But it's actually the architecture is Delta Lake on my Azure storage. This is the architecture on Azure. Okay. So we've seen the table. let's go back to the presentation. So we saw how to do copy into, very, very easy. And remember that Azure Databricks has the ability to run jobs, okay? And so you can basically, because it's a batch, you can create a job and run this copy into, when you need. Let's go further. So let's talk about the next one. The next one is autoloader. So autoloader allows you to do streaming ingestion. And so, you do have the Azure streaming, but if really depending on your implementation, you can actually use this streaming from Databricks, depending on your needs. So they're slightly different. And here you can incrementally process files. So the copy into, I tell it what I need to, the data that I need to load, right? But here you can just incrementally load files. So you have a directory in your landing zone or raw folder where you would just add files, okay? And you have two ways to do it. Either you do directory linking, so new file detection in real time or in batch. So what it does is that you define that you have like a service that sits on that directory, and when a new file comes, it detects it. So it's either scheduled or in real time, and it will auto load that file into your with autoloader into your table, or whatever you want to do with this. And then you can work with message queues as well. So this is more. So the autoloader is a little bit more complex than the copy into, but it's still cost effective, and it can ingest billions of files. So it's written in a way that is very cost effective, and performance is very good. It's fault tolerant. So basically, if there's an error, it will roll back. Okay, so that's very important. You can it works with some types of data like JSON, CSV, Parquet, and also Delta. And so this allows you for the automated schema evolution. So you can either say, I do not want the schema to change, or you can say, I'm okay with this. And it will append the data, even if, let's say, you added a column or you deleted a column, it will still be okay. So you will still be able to read the data, and you will so it will just append that column into the Delta file. So it's really good for cases where your schema changes often, or even if rarely, it still allows you to do that. And so you can also configure and say, okay, columns that do not match the schema are going to be rescued and not dropped. Okay, so you have like columns that are rescued type, and you can still get this information and decide what you do with those columns that are not are not consistent with your schema. And this can be the autoloader can be executed by Python and Scala. Some very important thing. So autoloader is much more complicated, and because we don't have a lot of time, I'm just going to show you quickly how it works. There are two very important options. One of them is the trigger, and the other one is the output mode. Output mode, you have either append, on, or time interval, so overwritten. Okay, so append or overwritten. And with the trigger, because the power of Databricks is very expensive, you have to tell it what to do. So for example, you can cap, the default is 500 milliseconds. Basically, you start, processing, and after 500 milliseconds, it's going to pause. You can create a time interval. and you can say, okay, process everything and then shut down, or process everything with multiple batches and then shut down. So you tell this is the most cost effective because you don't want the cluster to be up if you don't need it. Okay, the Databricks cluster. So like I said, this is a little bit more complicated than the copy into, and so I posted here this link, and you have tutorials on how to start. And quickly, because I see that I'm running out of time, I'm just going to go back to my notebook and show you very, very quickly what we can do with the autoloader. So the important thing is that you say, okay, for example, this is my path. So in this case, this is streaming by user. So it's just to show you that, yeah, you need to use Python for different types of implementations. So in this case, we're creating a table by the username. We're creating a checkpoint path for the file that is going to do like the checkpoint. We create the table, we drop the table if it doesn't exist, and then we just read the stream with configuration. So we have the load of the table, we have the option. So what are the options? We have the trigger that I talked about before, and which table. So basically what this is doing is it's taking streaming events from that directory and it's writing into a table. Okay, and this is the select what are we looking for in that directory. So what type of information? Okay, and so just to give you an example, like if you hover over this, you can get the properties and what does it mean? And this is true for all the Spark functions. So you can see what are the parameters, what to run, and stuff like that. I mean, a lot of detailed information about that function. So I'm not going to run it right now. I'm going to move forward to the next one. So ADF copy. ADF copy, it's using Azure Data Factory to copy the data. And so it's a very rich orchestrator. If you've been working with this, it's like an ETL or ELT tool where you have it's a no code. It has a no code interface as well as you can code. For example, it can execute Databricks Notepad. It has this ability. So if you have Notepad, the notepads that I showed, you can use ADF as the orchestrator, or you can use the Databricks job to run your stuff. But you can leverage Azure Data Factory. It has some out-of-the-box transformations. It can connect to hundreds of different data sources, and it can also write data lake files. So this is something that I will not have time to show, but basically you just have a copy. You have like you open the Azure Data Factory, and you can copy. It tells you which is the source, which is the target, and you just copy into the file format that or the file format that you need. It has a lot of it. It's a very rich ETL or ELT tool. So what I did is what I've shown you. I used Azure Data Factory and to copy the file or the files into the address folder in the data lake storage. So I'm not going to have time for the demo. I'm going to move on to how to load data via the user interface. So as you could see, we were in this user interface, and you see that even though Microsoft recommends to use ADF, we can still load data from many other different data sources as well as JDBC. So the ability to load data with JDBC opens us to actually almost all the RDBMS. And as you can see, you have snowflakes, you have additional things that you can do with the interface. This is just for information because you're going to get the the presentation if you need. So those are the internal, the external data sources that Databricks can interact with. And just very, very quickly, I will ask you for 5 more minutes. I know that I'm running a little bit late. I have a lot to talk about. So this is the example of, okay, so I did not do this. Let's go here. So via the interface, I just do new, and I can do add data. So I'm going to open it in a different screen, in a different tab. And what it gives you is the all the data sources that we have. And for example, I can use JDBC. So if I just click on this, it will automatically, and this is the beauty, it will automatically create template notepad notebook, and basically for each one of those also it creates automatically notebooks. So I happen to have, if I go back to my workspace, let me go back to my workspace. So what I did is that you see here, this is example from Postgres, okay, from Postgres database. So what I did is I copied this, and what I did is that I adjusted this to read from SQL Server. This is what we're looking at, right? We have a SQL Server database on Azure. So I just did not this one. Let me just check. It's not this one, it's the other one. Give me a second. Oops, I close it. So I think it's this one. Yes, that's the one. So you see, so instead of Postgres, I'm connecting to SQL Server. So I ran this, I imported the data, I can display. So I imported the data to that table. So let me just show you. So this is the source. This is how I'm creating my table. This is a managed table by Databricks. I import the data. So I read the data. I display the data. Okay. Then I can even create a view from that data. So that remote table, I can create a view. If I select the view, I still see the data. So you see, this is a very rich interface inside Databricks that I can use. And basically, I can create notepads and then either run the, notebook, not notepad, notebooks. And I can either run this with using the Databricks jobs, okay? Or I can, run the notebooks via the ADF by scheduling, okay? So this is via the interface. Let me just go back to the presentation. So we've seen, so I did not show you the Spark. Let me just do, if you remember, we had this, we have also optimized Spark. So optimized Spark allows us to do also some transformations. So let me go back to the demo. Not this demo, this demo. And here, what we can see, this is Spark transformation. So just quickly, okay, you have to install the library Delta. So it's either you do it like this, or if you go to the compute, you have the compute here, and you look at you go to your compute, and you have libraries. So you need the Delta to be installed here. Okay, so I did that. If you do help Delta, you will see what it provides you with type of functions and everything. So this interface has a lot of, like help and information. So with Spark, look, I configured the path. So now with this Spark, for example, I would like to convert my Parquet file into Delta. Okay, so what I do is my source is I configure my source and destination. I have to read my source. Okay, I'm reading my source, and then I'm transforming the data. So this is the function that transforms the data. In my case, I would like to only select city and postal code from my table, and the modified date greater than. So I decide what is the transformation that I'm making. You could do like any summaries or anything. So this is like SQL for this. That select allows you to create like a Spark select type, and then I can I'm using the same transform data to write, and I decide which format. So here I could have CSV. I could have any format. I can say overwrite or append, and I'm saving. Okay, so once I do that and I want to display my new table, my manage table, you see I only have the city and postal code. So with the Spark, I can do a lot of transformation, and this is coding. If you don't like to code, you can use Azure Data Factory, okay, to do the same thing, or you can run the notebook from Databricks. Now, let me go back to the presentation, and let's go to here. So Unity Catalog, once you have a Databricks workspace, you can see a lot of things and you can govern your data. So basically, you can look at the tables, you can add description, you can have like, you can see the lineage of where it has been executed. So let me just show you the demo for the catalog very fast. So the Unity catalog is going to be here in the catalog. Catalog. So I have a question. Does the SQL cell use the underlying Spark capabilities? So yes, that's the Spark. It's just an interface for you to, to be more comfortable if you're a SQL person or if you want to use SQL. Okay, so from here, from the data lake, I cannot see the workspace of my Databricks, but I can see it from here from the catalog. I have this workspace, and as you can see, I created tables under the default, so I can see my tables, my views, my tables. I can see them from here. And let's say I would like to know what I've done with the address table in Databricks. Okay, so this is how my table looks like. I can always add like description. You see, I can add tags, I can add comments, because this is probably going to be a shared workspace. I have a lot of things that I can do. I can grant permissions. For example, if I want the data analyst to only see this table, I can grant permissions. And I can see the lineage. So the lineage means everything that has been done with that table. So for example, I don't have workflows or pipelines, but I do have notebooks. So you can see if I have, for example, workflows or queries, or I will see everything here. So I can see what has been done with this query. For example, I ran it from this is my notebook. Okay. So this is the Unity catalog in very short description. It's worth continuing exploring. So we touched a little bit the tables. So we have the Unity catalog tables, which are managed. So we saw the Delta tables, which is the default. We have streaming tables with, for example, with the autoloader. We have batch tables, and we can also configure external tables. So this is very important, and I wanted to show you just quickly. So let's say that I created my my address folder on the data lake, but I did it with ADF. I did not do it through the Unity catalog or through the interface of Databricks, or not through Databricks at all. So now this is how it works, and this is beautiful. imagine that I have those folders on the data lake, for example, the customer or the address, okay? What I can do both with Azure Synapse and Databricks, I can create an external table that is, it goes directly to the folder, and everything underneath, basically for Databricks, I will have to have it in Delta Lake format. And basically I'm creating the table. So when somebody connects to those two, they will just run queries. And this is going to point directly to that folder on the data lake storage. Okay, so this is very helpful. And imagine that when you have data that is being updated on the data lake storage, you can either use Databricks or Synapse if you have, query that data and let users do what they need with both those two tools. And just to conclude, there are additional topics to look beyond, because this is a very basic presentation. I didn't even have time to do all the demos, but those are additional things to explore. So you have the AZ copy command line utility to copy files and blob storage. I did not touch anything about partitioning. So basically, when you have the very large set of data, it's worth it to look into partitioning. Usually, in Databricks, when you create managed tables and also external tables, you do this. You take care of the partitioning when you're defining the table. You also can manipulate for some of the methodologies to load data. You can also like say give information about the partitions that you're using. Unity catalog, I just briefly talked about this. It's very important to explore and how to basically configure it properly. I did not talk about change data capture and change data feed, which is the ability. The change data feed is Databricks. The CDC is more for the data sources. So imagine that now you have a database, either RDBMS or on Databricks, and now you want to be able to only capture the delta changes. So those mechanisms allow you to only capture what changed since last time or since a specific date. Very important to explore. Delta live tables, also a very important topic. So it's allowing you to, so instead of defining data pipelines, you define like a streaming table. Okay. So this is like a delta table. Live table is not a real table. It's just allowing you to stream data. Okay. And transform data based on queries. So it's like a scheduler, I would say. Obviously, to continue with the exploration of the data, look at the machine learning capabilities, Databricks jobs versus the Azure Data Factory pipelines and triggers, Azure triggers. And those are only the things that I think are very important. But if you already work with Databricks, you probably have additional topics to discuss. I see one more question. What about data loading performance optimization? Oh, that's a big topic. This is a basic presentation. I will be happy to do additional presentation about performance. This is a very big topic, but yes, everything has the ability to get better performance. Is there any way to integrate Databricks with MS Fabric? So MS Fabric is a very good question too. So all the questions are very good. So Microsoft Fabric is very, very, very new. It just became a general availability, I don't know, a few weeks ago. And I think that Microsoft were talking about this. But I don't have the answer. However, this is a very good topic for my next presentation. So I don't have the answer right now. Okay. You're going to get the presentation, so additional links I posted here. And finally, I'm done. Sorry, I'm a little bit over.
Yeah, usually interesting sessions take a lot of time, and we are usually almost off our time. Um, Michal, thank you for your time today. We had a lot of questions, and
Mhm.
I hope that you feel better now at the end of the session. So I hope you have some water.
Oh yes,
And
no, you see, I'm better. Yeah,
yeah,
thank you. Yeah, I had to cough a little bit. That's that's life.
yeah, by the way, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the thank you button for a speaker on the VR community page. This is really very important for the speaker. Thank you for everyone who spent time with us today. Don't forget to subscribe and see you soon at our external events for the data storyteller. Thank you for coming. Have a nice day or evening, depending on your time zone. See you.
Thank you.